Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Jude Del Prior, past president of NACM, court administrator from New Jersey. This year's conference theme was Making Connections, Integrative Leadership and Court Performance. It really stressed that court leaders at every level must be productive, responsive, efficient, trusted, and accountable to the communities that we all serve. This ability really requires that all of us as court leaders meet high standards and develop and integrate multiple skill sets. There were a number of great and highly relevant keynote addresses, workshops, shared interest groups that explored such issues as court reform, the right to counsel in criminal matters, engaging minority and economically disadvantaged communities, and how the Missouri judicial system is recovering from the events of 2014 in Ferguson. In the next half hour, Kate Fogarty and I, with the help of some other conference participants and attendees, will try to highlight some of the key takeaways from this year's conference. You may also use these snippet summaries as a teaser for many of the conference videos that will be placed online. So from excellent plenary sessions to numerous breakout workshops throughout this four-day conference, as well as the opportunity to network and share challenges and solutions with your colleagues, an exhibit show, a great social event at PNC Park. This conference really had it all. We'd like to express, on behalf of everyone here, our thanks to the entire Conference Development Committee under the leadership of newly sworn NACM President Scott Griffin for an excellent job. As they say in the trade, let's show them some love. How about a nice round of applause? In the musical The Sound of Music, the song Do Re Mi starts with the phrase, "Let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start." Monday's plenary challenges and solutions on fines, fees, and bail practices featured Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Ohio, Maureen O'Connor, and Kentucky State Court Administrator Lori Dudgeon as co-chairs of the CCJ-COSCA National Task Force on Fines, Fees, and Bail Practices. We'd like to hear from past President Paul Burke regarding this particular session and plenary. Let's see that video.
I'm here this morning to report on the first opening plenary session that we had for our conferences, the challenges and the solutions on fines, costs, and bail practices. I think there was two important takeaways from that. I was in receipt of the Department of Justice letter issued earlier this year in March that brought this issue to the attention of all of us in the state court systems. The two important takeaways from my perspective were first issued by Chief Justice O'Connor, that it is our responsibility, the court's responsibility, to make an absolute determination that anyone that has the ability to pay any of these particular assessments. The second one was made by Court Administrator Lori Dudgeon, that this issue represented our opportunity to educate the Department of Justice on the diversity of the various state court systems and those fines and assessments that are made either by the executive or the legislative department so that we can report back to them on how we're practicing these particular solutions that they've suggested.
Thank you, Paul. Judge Jimmy Edwards then took over the second plenary of the day, which was engaging with minority and economically disadvantaged communities. He, as a member of the National Advisory Board on Community Engagement in the State Courts initiative, updated all of us on the important work underway, beginning with a series of listening tours through virtual town halls, working with pilot states to test a range of minority community engagement strategies and exploring other important ways to do engagement of the community as opposed to the work that we've been doing over the years, which is more of an outreach effort of providing information. This really emphasizes the need to listen and hear the concerns of the minority communities across the nation. They've really established a mission to develop effective tools and resources to ensure equal access and justice to all and improve public trust and confidence in the minority communities that they have in state court systems. As a result of that, they've produced a series of videos in concert with PBS called Courting Justice with Tavis Smiley. We saw the first one at that particular session. They're now going to be placed on the National Center for State Courts website, and Jesse Rutledge assures me that as they're developed, they'll continue to be out there. Then we heard from ABA President Paulette Brown. She talked about creative collaboration as a tool, which really she used to forward an ambitious agenda to enhance diversity in the legal profession and increase the association's membership. As she says, increased diversity can only be achieved through association-wide collaboration as well as partnering with external organizations. She talked a lot about the Commission on Diversity Inclusion 360, which aimed to develop a sustainable action plan for the advancement of diversity in the ABA and the legal community over the next 10 years. Then she showed us a video called Hidden Injustice, which really addressed implicit bias on the bench. That video, as well as some other tools, are already available to you through the diversity portal that the ABA is maintaining. The quote on the front of that diversity portal from President Brown is as follows: "Diversity and inclusion will closely examine equal justice and rule of law issues to address a system where disparities are often stark and ambiguous." So then we went into a whole series of workshops in both the morning and the afternoon, and they were varied. Started with one that I was involved in called Extending the Core to Your Court, Governance and Purposes of Responsibilities of the Courts. As you all know, the new NACM Core is the centerpiece of NACM's educational content for court management professionals. It's NACM's intent to promote these competencies and promote excellence in court administration and justice. This particular session explored two of those core competencies: purposes and responsibilities of courts and court governance. All three presenters, Kathy Griffin, Ray Billot, and I, really used the core to present to everyone how the new curricula can be used in your court in a variety of different ways, both for professional development programs, especially through activities and discussion topics. You are reminded that the website is nacmcore.org for everything you need to know about the new core. At this time, we'd like to also look at another workshop, this one called Participatory Defense, Family and Community Involvement in the Courts. Let's hear from NACM board member, or former NACM board member, Shakiba Johnson.
I attended the Participatory Defense, Family and Community Involvement in the Court session held by Raj. There were three questions off top. How do we democratize the court system? How do we get community involvement? And how do we make it a collective achievement? Basically, Raj was like, if you start at the beginning of your court process and actually know what's going on or become a involvement in your process, then you have a better outcome at the end of your process versus just going to court and being told what's going to happen and what you're going to get, or your sentence, or your end result. If you get in at the beginning, you're actually able to know what's going on and have a better involvement. So that's where community organizing comes in, and getting the community together to actually get involved in the court system.
Thank you, Shakiba. We'll give you the standing applause later. Okay. So the next session that I'd like to report on is Reimagining Courts, Designed for the 21st Century. It's based on a book by Victor Flango and Tom Clark of the National Center for State Courts called Reimagining Courts. That particular session was just one of the authors, Tom Clark. And he really recommended that we utilize a triage approach based on case characteristics, litigant goals, and resolution processes. Tom argues that courts must fundamentally reorganize all of our business processes around the concept of the litigant as a customer. So His 4 takeaway points were to develop a very strong customer focus, to increase access to justice, and 3, more efficient service delivery to both litigants, number 1, and stakeholders, number 2. There was also a session on problem-solving courts in the 21st century, led by past NACOM President David Slayton. That particular session presented the important 2015 COSCA policy paper, Problem-Solving Courts in the 21st Century. And basically, David recommended to all of us that if we're involved in any type of problem-solving courts, that we adopt the definition of problem-solving courts based upon the 6 core elements of the CCJ COSCA paper. Those 6 elements are a specialized court docket or program that is non-adversarial. 2, where judicial authority is ongoing and where supervision is stressed. 3, that team collaboration, community involvement, and information sharing be promoted through interdisciplinary partnerships. 4, that we use specialized team expertise and training. 5, that we coordinate strategy for individualized treatment and responses based on risk and needs. And lastly, evidence-based processes that are therapeutic and rehabilitative in nature. We then have another session that was administering the courts in a time of criminal justice reform. We'd like to hear from first-time conference attendee Shannon Denise-Budenis on this particular session.
I attended the class on administering the courts in a time of criminal justice reform, and the takeaways I took from the class were the need for data, which is very important, and to look at the reforms we already have in place and use that data as we move forward and continue on this journey of criminal justice reform. Additionally, we discussed obstacles and areas where managers might be able to be part of this process and bringing both of the reform and the managers together to make the process of reforming as smooth as possible. I felt the instructors gave a lot of good information regarding what statistical data is already out there and where we are going with that data, and as well as having the participants in the class were very interactive in discussing their experiences and their roles in what reform is occurring for them.
Thank you, Shannon. The last session that I'd like to report on from day 1 was the call to action, Achieving Civil Justice for All. This particular session highlighted the work of the Conference of Chief Justices Civil Justice Improvements Committee and really offered a blueprint for change for civil case management. Included in that session was a top 10 list, which I will shorten to 5 based on our time constraints for the afternoon. But the first one was to focus change toward justice, not winning. The second was to develop a laser approach to discovery exchange. The third was the need to develop engaged judges throughout the process. The fourth was the smart use of technology. And the fifth was the need to value the court system, the judges, the juries, and the staff. Kate?
Thank you, Jude. I'm Kate Fogarty, NACOM Early Court Professional and the District Administrator in the bipolar state of Minnesota that is either absurdly humid and mosquito-ridden or a frozen tundra. So for those of you that didn't know, Jude became a first-time grandpa yesterday. So congratulations, Papa Jude.
Thank you.
That precious granddaughter of yours is one of the many reasons we're all here. This room's full of leaders dedicated to improving the justice system for this generation, your granddaughter's generation, and for generations to come. So we kicked off Tuesday with a plenary about collaborative leadership, Ferguson and beyond, and we learned more about exactly what we can do to improve that next generation of justice. Monica will share some key learning points with us.
The session I attended was Ferguson and beyond. It was a plenary session, and it was so insightful. They talked so much about the importance of making sure that you are truly monitoring your court's performance, your policies and procedures, and being willing to identify when change needs to be made. And then once those changes are made, making sure you have a robust community outreach program so you get that message truly sent out to all of those that need to know.
Thanks for that insight, Monica. Several breakout sessions rounded out the morning on Tuesday. In the session on the profession of court administration, ethics, and beyond, attendees participated in 3 different role-playing scenarios. The scenarios around ethical issues and politics and the use of social media were especially timely considering the role social media has played in the hotly contested upcoming election. Attendees were reminded that ethical issues can be quite gray at times and that as leaders, we need to be consistent and fair in how we administer our local policies around these important ethical issues. Annette Fritz attended a session on language access and has a few things that she will take back home to implement. Let's hear from Annette.
I attended the language access class on Tuesday afternoon with Matt Kleiman and Richard Schaffler. And a couple of the takeaways for me was that in our weighted caseload studies for judicial time and staff time, they now have tools for us to measure the amount of time it takes to hold a hearing with interpreters, and the value of having that data helps us better manage the amount of time we might put on our calendar dockets. As well, another takeaway was if we have court forms that people are using to file their cases with the court, we could add check boxes for people to so indicate if they speak a language other than English, and we could be better prepared for them when they come to their first hearing. It was a great session.
Attendees at the session on building a connected court, increasing access online, learned about the great work of our colleagues in Michigan who have developed an online platform to resolve low-level citations and offer a payment plan-like model for bail on warrants that allows users to pay half now and half in 30 days. In the session about court leaders as internal consultants, attendees discussed our 3 greatest challenges in this area and in moving innovative projects ahead: expertise, neutrality, and available time. Janet discussed developing our internal resources with the necessary skills to deliver these innovative projects. In addition to the NACM core competencies, she noted the importance of skills such as diplomacy, grace, cultural awareness, emotional intelligence, and consensus building. We need to display managerial courage in speaking up and challenging other leaders and judges. Now let's hear from Edwin on the session regarding access.
Well, I attended the session on access to justice, which was mainly about clerks and court administrators coming together to find ways to promote fair access to the courts. The citizens that we serve, they don't see 2 separate entities. They see the courts as one, and it's our responsibility to ensure that they have the access they need to ensure that the things that they're trying to solve are resolved in a fair and impartial way without the barriers that you would normally find in a bureaucratic system.
After lunch, we enjoyed a short plenary about the book American Judicial Power, The State Court Perspective, where we learned that the framers of the United States Constitution wanted the judicial branch to have decisional independence. We also learned about the natural conflict that occurs when we have that decisional independence, but are lacking the institutional independence as we call on the other 2 branches of government for sustainable funding and smart policy making. We were reminded of the significance of the state constitution and that most of our court users will have their only court experience in this state system. Their perception of our legitimacy as a branch will be based more on their experiences with how we administer the state constitution and laws than the United States Constitution and federal laws. We were reminded that we cannot expect the public to support that which it cannot understand. Mike and Paul challenged us to give meaning to the access to justice and the rights to a remedy. We have an external challenge to engage the communities we serve so that people really do believe that we are working for them. We need vision, innovation, and leadership to remain relevant and legitimate to the public, and we need to provide access according to the expectations of the people that we serve. Now let's hear from Katie a few more practical takeaways on how we can close that gap.
I went to the session on how administrators and clerks can close the gap in access for litigants. And so I had some takeaways from that I thought were pretty interesting. Number 1, know who your audience is. The Self-Represented Legal Network has data on graphics, on demographics for the whole country that helps you identify who your customers are. The second thing I learned is don't be afraid of taking 4D money or any other kind of federal grant money. Apply to the audience that it's intended to address, but take what you learn and what you put in place and try to expand it into other case types and other situations. The third thing I learned is many of our positions, you have to have a high school degree. Don't be afraid of hiring somebody who has a higher level education, somebody with a 4-year degree or 2-year degree. Our customers need compassion, and they need people with critical thinking skills who can help them bridge the service gap that we're trying to help them with. Not everybody has a legal situation. They might think they do, but there might be other services available to them that would really be a benefit, and we need to be critical thinkers so we can help them access those services.
Late Tuesday afternoon, conference attendees were able to participate in discussions about shared interests, where we learned about sex trafficking and the challenges of identifying human labor trafficking networks. We also learned about the important relationship we must foster with our tribal courts. Oregon shared their success in improving the child support collection efforts by 45% through a collaboration with their local tribal court. Now let's get some more insight from Jude.
On Wednesday morning, there was a session on bail reform in New Jersey.
Breakout with.
That's okay. Go ahead. Nope, that's later.
On Wednesday, there was a session on bail reform in New Jersey and elsewhere, led by new board member Greg Lambard and Shannon Dennis-Budenis. Did I happen to mention they're from Burlington County, New Jersey? And they're key to my management team. But they really reviewed the sea change efforts going on in New Jersey right now as the Garden State shifts from monetary bail to risk-based determinations of release, utilizing a series of analytics developed by the Arnold Foundation. These changes go into effect January 1st of 2017. Also included with that whole set of analytics is a move to a new series of speedy trial recommendations and timeframes. So we've got our work cut out for us in New Jersey, and they did a great job highlighting all of that information.
Sarah attended a breakout session on technology and has some good ideas that she's going to bring back home to Minnesota as well. Let's hear from her.
I attended the court technology breakout with the court managers and the CIOs from a couple different areas. What I learned there were a couple things, and what we need to do is really engage with our colleges and communities to try to set up some sort of hackathon, and we would love to be able to do that and get some ideas for our district court app that we've just started to develop. So that would be really great. So hopefully we'll be able to partner with our county. They already do these hackathons in Minneapolis with Hennepin County already, so we'll have to try to figure out a way to do that and get some ideas. And the other idea that I think would be really good to do is what's called internal capital venture capital investments. And so that would be like Shark Tank. And so we could get our staff ideas involved and get them involved in see which one is the best, and we can move that one forward and set some money aside, have them tied into our strategic plan and get some engagement with our staff and hear their ideas. So it was a great session. It was packed to the brim, and it was a good one for this morning.
We started off this morning with a session on using culture to drive strategic change. Barry taught us that unignorable moments happen in 4 ways: publicly, systemically, irreversibly, or when the identity of our organization is challenged. He noted the big shift in how organizations function, that we're moving to more distributed decision-making, creativity, and autonomy, collaboration, intrinsic motivation, and negotiation. And he reminded us that there is a value to being stuck. It provides an opportunity to learn, build capabilities, and set the stage for change. We need to leverage the power of being stuck by pausing to listen, using resistors for feedback, and building a coalition. He also cautioned us to resist rushing outside the organization for help, and that we have internal people that we can call on and leverage who understand our culture and have expertise. In a breakout session this morning on creating a user-friendly court experience, we learned about the importance of getting court user feedback to help us design products and create content that is most helpful. Attendees discussed using blueprints, scenarios, and story maps to engage users and generate insightful feedback. And we were reminded of the importance of usability testing. Does this really work for the user when they are under stress and coming to the justice system for resolution? Finally, I want to thank the NACOM board and committees for executing an epic annual conference full of amazing educational opportunities and networking time. I also want to thank the National Center for State Courts for all of their assistance in pulling off the last several days. This would not have been possible without that important partnership. I look forward to seeing all of you in Portland for the mid-year conference, February 5th through 7th, and again next summer at our annual conference in collaboration with the International Association for Court Administration that will be held in Washington, D.C., July 9th through 13th. Now back to you, Jude.
Thanks, Kate. So just a few final thoughts. The theme, once again, making connections, integrative leadership, and court performance. This concept of integrative leadership is an emerging leadership approach that fosters collective action across many types of boundaries in order to achieve the common good. It brings together leadership concepts and practice rooted in 5 major sectors of society: business, government, nonprofits, media, and community. Applying this type of leadership to court performance is key to our continued relevance and success. A few final thoughts. The first from Ernie C. Friesen, many of you know, pioneer and founder of our profession. When in one of his courses, several of us asked him, what's the key to success in court administration? His answer was, you need to drink a lot of coffee. Wasn't quite sure what he meant at the time, but being in the profession for a while now, I realized that what he means is you need to go to a lot of meetings. You need to network. You need collaboration. You need to ensure the success of any undertaking by making those connections. National Center for State Courts President Mary McQueen kind of refers to it as her grip and grin time, where she's shaking hands and grinning and smiling and making those connections. I also found it in cybernetics. Cybernetics is a pretty complex theory, but they coined the term called the Law of Requisite Variety. To put it simply, it's as follows. The more options and flexibility you have when life throws challenges your way, the more successful you will be. I think Charles Eames probably said it the best when he said, eventually everything connects. People, ideas, and objects. The quality of connections is the key to quality. I'll add that the quality of connections is the key to success in our profession and in any project that we undertake. Thank you for your time. Kate and I appreciate you remaining to the bitter end. Thank you to the entire NACOM board for their continued support and to the Conference Development Committee. We appreciate it. Turn you back to Scott.